All right, Dimitri, first of all, good afternoon. And let me get into this story that we have yet not talked about today, but understand this is sort of gaining more attention by the day. So Harun Bouazi saying he sees racism in the National Assembly every day. What's this about?
Well, he was delivering a speech at a not-for-profit group in Montreal. And in his speech, he said that basically every day, and I quote him, in the National Assembly, he witnesses the mechanism of racism. And he went further to say whoever is North African, Muslim, Black, and indigenous, are viewed by his fellow parliamentarians at the National Assembly and by the National Assembly as, and I quote, dangerous and inferior. Quickly thereafter, Liberal MNA Marois Risky issued a vitriolic response saying this is totally and utterly unacceptable, and gave the perfect example where she has been voted the most effective parliamentarian by her peers. This speaks more than to just political rhetoric or partisanship, Aaron. This is an unfortunate, and I would dare say despicable attempt to ghettoize and to radicalize new Canadians, specifically of Muslim faith in this case, because that's the group he was speaking to. And that is not something that any parliamentarian of the National Assembly should ever be doing. Basically accusing the National Assembly, and by extension, those that every single member of the National Assembly represents, as being racist, and viewing, in this case again, Muslims, as being dangerous and inferior. He should be doing the complete opposite. And then we saw the reaction by the co-spokesperson of Québec Solidaire, basically saying, we spoke to Mr. Bouazi and he didn't choose his words carefully. Well, I think he chose his words very carefully, and there should be consequences for this. Again, partisanship, political rhetoric, there's plenty of room for that. But an attempt to radicalize members of our community against society at large is something that should not be tolerated, and he should be excluded from the caucus of Québec Solidaire, in my view.
And will he be, do you think? I mean, how much pressure will be brought to bear to do just that?
Well, I think that the National Assembly and the other 124 MNAs, including those who are with Québec Solidaire, need to address this issue at the National Assembly, because the words are what he attempted to do is not a small thing that can be and should be ignored. We are facing challenges right now as a society as a whole, and the last thing we should be doing, especially elected officials, is an outright attempt to radicalize people against our own society.
All right, we're going to leave that story there. As I said, I imagine, as you're pointing out, there'll be more to hear on this through the next few days. We spent a lot of time, Dimitri, yesterday talking about that Léger poll, the one that shows CAQ support basically at an 8-year low. It shows the PQ continuing to gain. I think the trade-off was pretty much offset, right? So 3 points better for the PQ, 3 points worse for the CAQ. What are we looking at this meeting in terms of, you're suggesting Greater Montreal has something to do with this? What does it show?
Well, Greater Montreal and youth, and I like to look at data beyond just the top-line items that you talked about, which is how satisfied Quebecers are with their provincial government, what's happening in the provincial Liberal leadership race, and where every party stands. I found two elements very interesting in that poll. The first one is support for Quebec sovereignty. So overall, support for Quebec sovereignty is sitting at 37% in favor and 55% against. Now, let's break that down. For younger Quebecers aged from 18 to 34, almost 60% of the younger generation of Quebecers are against sovereignty, for only 31% supporting it. You go one age group above, 35 to 54, again, almost 60% are against it, which leads me to conclude maybe this is why Paul Saint-Pierre Plamondon is in such a rush to commit, come hell or high water, to hold a referendum during his first mandate, should he get a mandate after the next provincial election, which is slated for 2026, which also means this is bad news for the sovereignty movement, because the younger generations are basically saying this is not and this should not be a priority.
You see, I find that interesting because I think that number has been pretty much been what, between 35 and 38% for the last, I don't know, 30 years, right?
Right, and I will give some credit to former Prime Minister Harper. He was actually at an all-time low of 33% when he was Prime Minister.
Oh, okay, you can spin it that way. I have no problem with that. I would just simply wonder, yeah, I was talking about this as well, this idea that we're still in that range, and your breakdown is interesting, right? Because, yes, maybe that's why he's in such a rush to get this done, so assuming support doesn't continue to weaken even further. But I wonder, too, do you think this is one of the reasons why he doesn't talk much about separation anymore either?
He's going to have a hard time walking away from that very firm and clear commitment. And if he tries to, I suspect the next leader of the Liberal Party of Quebec will make sure every single day of the next election campaign to say a vote for the PQ means a vote to split up Quebec from Canada, means a vote to have another referendum. And the bad news for the PQ, the really bad news for the PQ, and Aaron, we're both old enough to remember, back in our day when we were younger, a long time ago, the youth were divided. The vote of the 18 to 34 was much more divided as it relates to the question of the future of Quebec. And today, we see an overwhelming majority of almost 60% of the younger generation saying, hey, we got to focus on the economy. We got to focus on cost of living. We got to focus on us having access to buy our home the way our parents did. And Mr. Saint-Pierre Plamondon is going to have a hard time. And this is not just amongst Anglos or the cultural communities or the ethnic vote or Montreal. This is across Quebec.
Although maybe that's part of the rush to explain, right? We talked about this a little while ago too, what the financial plan might look like on day one of a separate Quebec, and what a rosy picture he painted the day after we become, a nation.
Well, the financial plan that the PQ presented is a rainbow financial plan in many ways, because let's not forget, the day after a referendum, there needs to be a conversation with the government of Canada. And those negotiations won't be easy. And what the PQ is going to be saying is, well, there's international treaties on secession and so on and so forth. But there are many items, including, and maybe we have Justin Trudeau to thank for one thing at least, even though he's tripled the debt, Quebec would have to assume 25% of that.
Well, there is, I guess there is that. I like, by the way, last time I spoke to...
silver lining in everything.
Yeah, I guess. Right? Last time I spoke to Paul Saint-Pierre Plamondon, I said, where's the... Obviously, there's no guarantees in coming up with a hypothetical budget for day one as a separate nation, but he pointed to Montenegro as an example of a place, that seceded at the time, right, from, we're talking about Yugoslavia, however many years ago, and it was a peaceful secession, as opposed to many others that have happened in parts of Europe that have not been. Because the question was, what about those people here who, if a vote was to go that way, who are not really happy with the idea of Quebec leaving Canada? And so his example was, we can be the next Montenegro.
Well, I would not want to be the next Montenegro from an economic perspective. Yes, he is right. It was done peacefully. But at the end of the day, the question is very simple. At what cost?
Exactly.
What cost to Quebecers will we have to go through this battle? Which is not worth it at the end of the day. And you know what? Politicians often say the rhetoric of listen to what the younger generation has to say, don't pass on the debts and the burdens to the younger generation. Well, what the younger generation is saying today is we don't want to talk about referendums.
Very different from what it used to be. All right, Dimitri, thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Always a pleasure.
Take
Have
care.
a great day.
You too.